Michael Kaskey-Blomain, our Sixers insider, and of course, Colangelo also talking today as well. Will catch us up on all things Sixers. Michael, how are you, sir?
Pete, I'm doing pretty well, man. How about yourself?
Not bad. I got a little bit of a head cold, so that's why I sound funny. But other than that, the brain is still sharp, I think. So where would you like to start here? Do you want to talk about the 108-107 win, or do you want to talk about the Nerlens Noel's mess that the Sixers have created for themselves?
I mean, you'd think you'd like to start with a win, but, unfortunately, I think you got to go with Noel. I mean, that situation just seems to be really hanging over the franchise. And like you said, even after a win where you would think there'd be some positivity, the main storyline and what everyone was talking about wasn't the win really. It was, or what Joel did. It was mainly about the Noel situation. So it's kind of like a black cloud hanging over the team right now.
What did you learn today from Bryan Colangelo's comments that you didn't know before about the situation and how they're handling it?
I learned that him and Brett Brown don't seem to be on maybe exactly the same page regarding the situation. It seemed like Colangelo kind of backtracked for Brett Brown on some of the comments that he made on the other night on the game that Nerlens didn't play in the victory against the Nets. It seemed like Colangelo kind of took back some of the comments and made it tried to make it seem as though Nerlens wasn't going to not be playing for an extended time, more so that it was a fluid situation, which is kind of a different perspective than the one that we heard from Brett Brown the other night.
Mike, when you look at the Nerlens situation, it begs the question, to me at least, what does it indicate more to you? That if they were looking, he's obviously been on the trade block, or at least the rumors about it. Does playing him less indicate they're trying to execute a trade here, or does playing him less beg the question, if you want to trade him, shouldn't you be playing him more?
Yeah, that's a great question, Scott. You would think that if they are trying to get him out, they would want to avoid the negative publicity that he's generating right now, and at least kind of get him out there to showcase his skills a little bit, which is why the initial announcement that he was going to be, sort of sidelined for the immediate future was, somewhat surprising to begin with. So, honestly, at this point, after the comments that was made by, GM Bryan Colangelo today, I really don't know exactly what to expect as far as him going forward. Colangelo went as far as today to say that if all the bigs were still on the roster at the end of the season, then basically so be it, which is kind of just a very different perspective than I think a lot of us had assumed. I think we all thought that a move is basically coming as soon as possible, and it still might be, and this could all just be a cover. But mainly the comments today, if anything, just kind of clouded the situation even further as to exactly what the franchise is thinking at this moment.
What do you make of, as you said, the comments from Colangelo and Brown don't exactly make it seem like they're on the same page here? What does that say about Brett Brown's future with the organization?
Yeah, that's another great question. I'm trying not to read into it too much, but I think that's that's kind of a question that's been lingering also to a smaller scale since the switch was made from the Sam Hinkie to the Colangelo regime. Obviously, Brett Brown was a Hinkie guy. He wasn't selected by the Colangelo administration. And, a lot of people were potentially thinking that Brett could be, kind of like a fall guy here, used to transition the team over. And I think that could still be the case. I'd be surprised if any sort of move was made during the season, considering, what Brett has had to deal with as far as the turnover, the roster turnover and the injury issues. But I think I thought that same thing when I was hearing the comments today. I think the fact that they wouldn't be exactly on the same page as you would, probably like your head coach and GM to be, certainly casts, a little bit of doubt as to Brett's standing within the organization going forward, I would say.
Michael Kaskey-Blomain with us, our Sixers insider. Michael, with all the Sixers players who've been on minute restrictions like Embiid and Okafor and Bayless and even Covington in one game, why didn't Colangelo just point to that for Noel? Or are things more complicated than just Nerlens coming off of an injury?
Yeah, that's another great point. I mean, he missed, the first 22 games of the season with an injury and then suffered another one as soon as he came back. So even if he was, he probably could have played a little bit more than 8 minutes that first game. But even so, the team would have been, cautious with how much they used him. And like you said, that could have been used as a, kind of an excuse, if you will, for the situation. But, I think Nerlens' comments to the media directly kind of made it a little more difficult to, kind of hide what's really going on. He's been pretty blunt about the situation since, all the way back to media day when he, initially made the comments. So I think that, they realize that the reality of the situation is out there, and I think they're just kind of trying to, patchwork around it as best as they can.
Yeah, the comments, I mean, I thought initially where he blurted out the expletives and stuff, that got everybody's attention, but I thought he was much more professional when he said, I think this has been decided a long time ago. I've been staying very content and just focused on bettering myself and worrying about the things I can control. You got to prepare yourself for things like these. Take it one step at a time. Be a pro. Work on the things that you have to work on. But the key quote to me is where he says, I think a lot of people knew it was going to get to a point like this. Now I'm the one that's in it. I'm going to deal with it the best way possible. Professional statements out of Nerlens Noel, like mature-esque statements out of Nerlens Noel, it's going to get to a point like this, he says, well, didn't the Sixers know it was going to get to a point like this? And why didn't they deal with this earlier?
Yeah, exactly, man. I think a lot of people are asking that question right now, especially today in light of Colangelo's comments. I think, everyone that just sort of casually followed the team could see that once all three of these guys were healthy on the floor together, that there just wasn't going to be enough minutes to go around, and someone was going to end up, being shortchanged and, in turn get frustrated. And like Nerlens said, I think that was pretty blatant to see coming all the way back since, Okafor was initially selected in the 2015 draft. Basically ever since last season, the trade rumors around both of them have been swirling, and the organization just has yet to pull the trigger, which I think, at this point, considering it looks like the value that they're going to get back is probably, not going to be as high as it could have been. So like you said, I think a lot of people are wondering that exact question. This issue was something that you could see coming and was avoidable if a move was made earlier, like it should have been done.
Michael, can't talk Sixers without mentioning the name Ben Simmons. Can you kind of has there been any further update on a timetable for his return?
Bryan Colangelo actually, spoke on that today. Unfortunately, he did not. He said there is no timetable still, and he basically said that the team is not going to rush him back. So there's really no new information on that. He's, taken the visible steps forward. He's on the bench now. He's out of the boot. So he seems to be progressing. I think there's been all reports have been good. He's on track. But as far as an exact return date, the team has been very kind of vague on that ever since the initial injury happened. And it seems, as of Colangelo's comments today, they still seem to be not wanting to really, put a date down. But, hopefully, I think the original estimate that some had was, late January. If no setbacks, maybe that's the time that we're potentially looking at.
Were you in the building last night?
Last night, no, I was not. I was in the building on Friday night. I was not able to make it down there last night.
Just curious, the vibe, Joel Embiid right now, obviously 33 points and 10 rebound game, flying into the stands. So it's like you have this diversity where the Sixers are having a tough time shedding controversy and they still have issues that follow them. But then they have exciting things where Embiid's doing stuff or Ilyasova's contributing or Saric is doing good things. So how do you think they resolve that, go for more positive than negative, I guess?
Unfortunately, honestly, I think until a move is made with one of the big guys to kind of balance out the roster, it's going to be something that's going to be in the headlines, and it's going to be something that is, it's on people's mind and they're talking about. On the court, I think once they, for the game against the Nets was a good sign with, the continuity, like what they've been doing. They've actually won 3 out of the past 5 games. I think you're starting to see a little bit of improvement with the team. Obviously, once Ben Simmons comes back, that's, it's a whole nother story. But I think, with the focus on the team, just getting, solid minutes, once a rotation, I think that's been the biggest thing now with all the guys. The minutes have just been, not equal. They've been up and down. I think if they can just kind of hammer out, a rotation that works for them, that they can follow, consistently night in and night out, and they get used to it, I think people, see some benefits from that on the court.
You mentioned earlier Colangelo talking about Simmons. Why the vagueness around Simmons? Is it to lower the expectations on his recovery timetable?
That's my guess. I think they don't want to put any sort of pressure on him as to, a deadline of when they want to see him. Obviously, in case worst case scenario, if there's a setback, they don't want to have to come out with and say, we had this date out there, but he's not going to get it. I think this is just the least pressure situation for them. They can kind of just let him go about his recovery at his own process and see how he's holding up. Obviously everyone fan-wise and, media-wise wants to see him out on the court this year. I think the organization does too, obviously. But, his long-term health is obviously what's most important. The team knows that, and in the end, the fans know that. So, if it comes down to a situation where he's just not quite ready to go and we're creeping into February, the middle of February, March, it's possible that he wouldn't play. And I think, the team just doesn't want to have a date out there that they have to commit to. But, all the signs so far that his recovery has been fluid. So that's at least a good sign.
Michael Kaskey-Blomain, he's our 97.3 Sixers insider. He also has Pitt and Temple in his background, but I'm going to claim him as a fellow Temple Owl, just like me. He comes on with us to provide insight and analysis, and we appreciate it, buddy. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me on, fellas. Always a good time.